And welcome to our daily show where we discuss the fourth stimulus check updates, what's going on in the United States, Washington, D.C., money, investing, and the next stimulus package, $3.5 trillion, the price tag it has been announced on, which is now coming under fire from Senator Joe Manchin, pretty much one single senator who wants to significantly cut the price tag of this next stimulus package. We actually have a major kind of announcement, a major interview from Senator Joe Manchin, which we're going to go over in this video. A major interview done by Senator Joe Manchin on what he wants to see with this next stimulus package. We're going to be talking about that, as well as also a major announcement by the Secretary of Treasury, Janet Yellen, on the U.S. government could default by next month. That's correct. The U.S. government could default by next month if we don't raise the debt limit. And here's the thing, is that the Republicans, like 90% of them in Congress, have vowed to not raise the debt limit. This is correct. So we're going to jump right in because we got a lot to discuss. We're literally like going towards a cliff that something has to happen, and we got a lot to talk about here. So if you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe down below. I will keep you up to date with everything going on in our country and in our economy, and with this next stimulus package, which is supposed to be the largest stimulus package ever. The Democrats have announced it at $3.5 trillion. However, there is one single senator by the name of Senator Joe Manchin, a Democrat from West Virginia, although some of our viewers would say he's not really a Democrat, he's a dino, a Democrat in name only, who is threatening to significantly cut the size of this stimulus package. And I'll be giving you the latest details of that in this video. So if you find these videos helpful, don't forget to hit the like button for us down below, and let's jump right in. Okay, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen today urges Congress to raise the debt limit, warns House Speaker Nancy Pelosi about extraordinary measures running out soon. Yeah. She says the U.S. is on track to default on the national debt next month in October. That's correct. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen on Wednesday warned House Speaker Nancy Pelosi that the mere specter of a U.S. default can have drastic consequences for the U.S. financial markets, and urged Democratic leadership to raise or suspend the debt ceiling as soon as possible. Janet Yellen reiterated that lawmakers have until some point in October before the department exhausts its extended efforts to prevent what would be a historic United States government default. Janet Yellen says, quote, "A delay that calls into question the federal government's ability to meet all of its obligations would likely cause irreparable damage to the U.S. economy and global financial markets." Yeah. She says in a letter dated today, quote, "We have learned from past debt limit impasses that waiting until the last minute to suspend or increase the debt limit can cause serious harm to business and consumer confidence, raise short-term borrowing costs for taxpayers, and negatively impact the credit rating of the United States government," Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen says. Most economists say that a U.S. default could spark a severe economic downturn and send borrowing costs soaring across the American economy. Despite dire consequences, lawmakers have made little progress. The ceiling prevents the Treasury from issuing new bonds to fund government activity once a certain debt level or date is reached. That level, $22 trillion in August of 2019, when former President Donald Trump was president, was suspended or reissued, and was suspended until the end of July 2021, when Republicans said they weren't going to reissue it again or weren't going to raise it again, even though we have to. The government literally cannot continue if we don't raise it again. Again, we have to raise it or else the government cannot continue. The new debt limit includes Washington's additional borrowing since summer of 2019, back when Trump was president. The Congressional Budget Office estimates in July that the new cap will likely come in just north of $28.5 trillion. When asked Janet Yellen's letter during her weekly press conference, Pelosi said Wednesday the Democrats won't risk the full faith and credit of the U.S. government. So yeah, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen says the U.S. is on track to default on the national debt and the full faith and credit of the United States government next month in October. But here's the thing, over 100 House Republicans and the vast majority, I think it's 46 of the Republicans in the Senate, have signed a letter promising not to vote to raise the debt ceiling as a partisan battle looms, even though they raised the debt ceiling twice when former President Donald Trump was president. It's something that has to be done. It's similar to the annual budget that the government has to do. You have to raise the debt ceiling every couple years. It's similar to a bank having to lend out money. The government has to raise the debt ceiling because the government spends more money than they make every single year. But yet over 100 House Republicans have signed a letter promising not to vote to raise the debt ceiling, and 46 Republicans in the Senate out of 50 have promised not to raise the debt ceiling. Even though they've raised the debt ceiling twice during former President Donald Trump's presidency, and Trump added over $8 trillion to the national debt in just 4 years. Now, in all fairness, this was during, or at least the last year or so, and $3.3 trillion of that $8 trillion was from the two stimulus packages. Stimulus package number one was $2.3 trillion. Stimulus package number two was almost $1 trillion. So $3.3 trillion of that $8 trillion was from two stimulus packages. Now, current President Biden has passed one stimulus package already of $1.9 trillion. And again, in all fairness, current President Biden is probably on pace to best former President Donald Trump's debt of $8 trillion. Again, it's probably a little bit early as we're only, 8 months into his presidency. So it's, it's hard to predict 4 full years of this. Now, remember, though, so again, $8 trillion Trump added of debt in 4 years. I think that's the most of any president. You'd have to look that up. And that's where we're going to get into. But again, President Biden is well on his way to probably spending $8 trillion or more. But again, we'll have to see when the full 4 years is up. But here's where we go into the next stimulus package. The next stimulus package and the next infrastructure package is not going to go on the national debt. The third stimulus check did, that $1.9 trillion did go on the national debt, just like the first two stimulus packages did. So the first two stimulus packages underneath former President Donald Trump went on the national debt, $3.3 trillion combined. And the $1.9 trillion went onto the national debt underneath Biden. But the next two stimulus packages, well, I should say the $3.5 trillion stimulus packages and the $1.2 trillion physical infrastructure packages, those two packages are paid for by raising taxes on the wealthy Americans making over $400,000, raising taxes on corporations, leftover stimulus money, and creative financing by doing things like forcing pharmaceutical companies to lower their prescription, and that will save the government hundreds of billions of dollars. They'll use that savings to pay for They'll use that savings to pay for parts of these packages, okay? Also, in the physical infrastructure package, the Republicans are using part of them, or the Republicans and the Democrats are using that money, that leftover unemployment money that the Republican governors opted out of paying to the people. They're using that leftover unemployment bonus money to pay for part of the physical infrastructure package. So they're using all sorts of creative ways, as well as in the $3.5 trillion stimulus package, to pay for the next package. So these next two packages, they're not just going to add $3.5 trillion onto the national debt. And remember, the physical infrastructure package is backed by both Republicans and Democrats, okay? So it's a bipartisan package. It's not just Democrats. The $3.5 trillion package is going to be passed only by Democrats. But again, it's not just going to slap $3.5 trillion of debt onto the national debt. The Democrats are saying it's going to be fully paid for. Whether it's going to be 90% paid for or 100% paid for, we'll find out once they actually pass the package and the Congressional Budget Office scores it. But that's where Senator Joe Manchin comes into play, and check out what he has to say now. This is absolutely kind of crazy. Senator Joe Manchin backs as little as $1 trillion of the $3.5 trillion plan. Senator Joe Manchin has privately warned White House and congressional leaders that he has specific policy concerns with President Biden's $3.5 trillion social spending dream, and he'll support as little as $1 trillion of it. At most, he's open to supporting $1.5 trillion of it, sources familiar with the discussion say. Why it matters: in a 50-50 Senate, that could mean the ceiling for President Biden's Build Back Better agenda, and that many progressive priorities, from universal preschool to free community college, are in danger of dying with this Congress, all because of potentially one man, Senator Joe Manchin. Manchin has also committed to paying for any new spending with new revenue. Again, this package is fully paid for, or almost fully paid for, whatever it ends up being, which will limit the ultimate size of any final package. This amount would be on top of the $1.2 trillion bipartisan infrastructure deal, which has already passed the Senate and is awaiting action in the House of Representatives. Between the lines, underlying Manchin's concerns with the Democrats' $3.5 trillion budget proposal, which originated in Senator Bernie Sanders' budget committee. Senator Bernie Sanders is largely considered the person in charge of the $3.5 trillion stimulus package, are deep and substantive differences over the size and the scope of the specific programs. Manchin has voiced concerns about some of Biden's plans to spend $400 billion for home caregivers. He's also talking about means testing and other key proposals, including extending the enhanced child tax credits, which provides up to an additional $300 per child per month, free community college, universal preschool, and child care tax credits. He's also skeptical that so-called dynamic scoring, which Democrats embraced as a way to offset some cost of hard infrastructure spending, can be applied to human or soft infrastructure proposals. For years, Republicans have relied on dynamic scoring to argue that tax cuts can pay for themselves in the long run by growing the economy and thereby increasing revenues. However, President Biden, speaking at the White House yesterday, said that Joe Manchin at the end has always been there with us, saying, quote, "He's always been there with me. I think we can work something out. I look forward to speaking with him when he comes back from seeing the hurricane damage here within the next day or two." Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer has rejected Senator Joe Manchin's call to pause on this stimulus package and Biden's plan, this $3.5 trillion package. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is rejecting a call for Democrats to hit the pause button on this stimulus package, indicating they are sticking to an ambitious timeline. Quote, "We're moving full speed ahead. We want to keep moving forward. We think getting this done is so important," Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer told reporters during a conference call on Wednesday. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer's remarks come after moderate Senator Joe Manchin urged his colleagues to hit the pause button on the $3.5 trillion plan. Senator Bernie Sanders says this morning that spending $3.5 trillion should be the very least that we should spend. Bernie Sanders says this morning the $3.5 trillion is already the result of a major compromise, and at the very least, this bill should contain $3.5 trillion, Senator Bernie Sanders told reporters on a conference call this morning. His remarks come as moderates Senators Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin have warned they can't support a $3.5 trillion top-line figure on the Democrat-only call. So this is pretty much all the art of the negotiation. And Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema have done this in the past. Most notably in the third stimulus check package, they did the exact same thing, and ultimately they got the deal done at $1.9 trillion. Joe Manchin, Kyrsten Sinema, and all the Democrats except for one in the House of Representatives all signed on. So they did the exact same thing in the third stimulus check package, and they got the deal done. If you remember back then, Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, I don't know why they do this every single time around, but I don't know if they want the media attention, if it's part of their game. This package is very different because the third stimulus check package, there were no tax raises, there were no increases, there was no leftover stimulus money, there was no pay-fors. There was no pay-fors at all. This next package is paid for, or at least it will be 90% paid for or 100% paid for, whatever the number comes out to be at the end. So it's interesting that they're still so concerned about it at the end of the day because all the last packages, nobody paid for. And really, the economy is as bad as ever. I mean, we've just had the August jobs report came out, and we only created 235,000 jobs for the entire country that has 330 million people. We didn't create 1 million jobs out of 330 million people. We created only 235,000 or 230,000 jobs out of the whole country. And the jobs numbers are going down as the months are going on. In fact, if the jobs numbers continue, the September jobs could be negative, literally negative. And this was after already half of the states have already opted out of the unemployment benefits. All the Republican states had already opted out of the unemployment benefits, bonuses. So now all the states have opted out of. So we'll see if the numbers go up or they continue on the downtrend because the Delta variant is just ravaging the country right now. So we'll see. The economy is not doing good. Literally the June, July, August numbers are on a trend like this. And the eviction moratorium has now ended. The unemployment bonuses has now ended, and the numbers are going down. So this next stimulus package and infrastructure package is at a most crucial time. So if anything, I feel like I've been down this road before with these negotiations because Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema and some of the moderate Democrats, it just, to me, it kind of feels like this is what they do every time and they come to a negotiation every time. But I don't know, it feels a little bit different this time because it feels like, as Bernie Sanders said, they've already negotiated on the price tag. The bill's paid for. Why would they want to go so low? On the other hand, though, they were able to find a $1,400 stimulus check for adults, $1,400 stimulus checks for children, $1,400 stimulus checks for adult dependents and college student dependents who didn't even get stimulus checks from stimulus check 1 and 2 and the $3,000 to $3,600 monthly checks, or $250 to $300 monthly checks for a total of $3,000 to $3,600 called the child tax credits in that $1.9 trillion. So Joe Manchin's saying he wants to go maybe and start at a $1.5 trillion price tag. So I don't know, maybe that's his starting point that he wants to negotiate down. You know, Bernie Sanders and a lot of the progressive Democrats are at 3.5 trillion. Joe Manchin's at 1.5 trillion. Maybe they need to negotiate somewhere in there. But honestly, there's a lot more progressive Democrats that want $3.5 trillion or more. There's very few moderate Democrats. In the Senate, there's only Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. There's maybe one more in there, one or two more. There's a few in the House, but they're not very vocal. They're not very vocal. So there's very few moderate Democrats. There's a lot more progressive Democrats. In the Democratic Progressive Caucus in the House is like 100 Democrats alone, and it's headed by Pramila Jayapal. So there's a lot more progressive Democrats than there are moderate Democrats, but one person could hold up the vote. So that's kind of where the art of negotiation comes in, and we're going to have to see how it all goes down. And don't forget, they have to avert a government shutdown here at the end of September. And then they also have to raise the debt ceiling some point in October, or else the U.S. government is going to default. Those are two different issues. Those are two different issues. We have the government shutdown, which is an annual budget type of thing. We've had government shutdowns before, and those aren't pretty. We kind of know what happens there. So they have to do that or do a stopgap measure. And then we also have the national debt limits, which they have to do every couple years. And the weird thing about it is that the Republicans this time around are saying they're not going to raise the debt limit, even though they did it twice underneath former President Donald Trump. I don't know. You have to raise the debt limit or else the government defaults. And again, you have to do it whether it's a Republican president, a Democratic president, an independent president. It doesn't matter who's the president. You have to do it. The government spends more money than they make every year. It's just how the government runs. It'd be like a bank not being able to lend out money. How would a bank function? A bank would go bankrupt. So nonetheless, they're going to have to figure something out with multiple different things here, and they're going to have to do it quickly or else we're in deep trouble. So I will keep you up to date with all these different things here on our show. Make sure to subscribe down below. You can click this top video here to watch my newest stimulus check video next. And this video is a talk about two different $1,400 stimulus checks. So click on one of those videos next. Thanks, guys, and I will see you in the next video.